On this day in history, we remember the remarkable individuals who shaped our world. Welcome to Who Died Today in History, where we honor their legacies. From artists to leaders, their impact lives on. If you find their stories meaningful, like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay connected.
Thank you to all our amazing channel members for your generous support.
Chadwick Boseman, one of the most beloved actors of his generation, died on August 28, 2020 at the age of 43 after a private 4-year battle with colon cancer. His death was natural, caused by complications from the disease, but it shocked the world precisely because of its secrecy. At a time when celebrity lives are often laid bare to the public, Boseman chose to keep his illness hidden, continuing to work on physically demanding roles even while undergoing surgeries and chemotherapy. This decision reflected both his personal dignity and the values of an era in which representation, resilience, and authenticity were deeply cherished. Boseman's passing carried immediate cultural consequences. News outlets and social media were flooded with tributes not only from fans, but also from world leaders, athletes, and fellow actors. His death came during the COVID-19 pandemic and amid the Black Lives Matter movement, amplifying its resonance. For many, Boseman embodied the hope of greater racial representation in Hollywood, especially through his iconic role as King T'Challa in Black Panther, 2018. The film was more than a blockbuster. It was a cultural event, showcasing an Afro-futurist vision of power, pride, and sovereignty rarely seen in mainstream cinema. His sudden loss left fans grieving not just the actor, but also the symbolic weight of the character he had brought to life. The consequences of his death extended into the entertainment industry itself. Marvel Studios decided not to recast T'Challa, instead reimagining the Black Panther sequel as a meditation on grief and legacy. Boseman's death, therefore, altered the trajectory of one of the most successful film franchises, while also forcing broader conversations about health disparities, particularly in how colon cancer disproportionately affects African American men. His private struggle and public strength highlighted the quiet heroism that often goes unnoticed until it is too late. Boseman's death undeniably amplified his legend. Like James Dean or Heath Ledger before him, his early passing enshrined him as a figure of both immense talent and unfulfilled potential. Yet unlike many tragic Hollywood stories, his was remembered less for scandal than for purpose. He became a symbol of grace under adversity, of using one's platform to uplift others, and of art as a vehicle for social change. In reflecting on Boseman's passing, we see how humanity immortalizes such figures through art, storytelling, and ritual commemoration. Murals of Boseman, scholarship funds in his name, and the continued cultural relevance of Black Panther ensure that his memory endures. His death reminds us that mortality often sharpens legacy, that power can exist in vulnerability, and that memory, whether through cinema, community, or cultural pride, is how we continue to honor those who shaped the world in life and in death. Juan Gabriel, born Alberto Aguilera Valadez, was one of Latin America's most beloved singer-songwriters, celebrated for his flamboyant performances and heartfelt ballads. On August 28, 2016, he died suddenly of a heart attack at the age of 66 while on tour in Santa Monica, California. His death was natural, yet its suddenness underscored the exhausting demands of a life lived in constant service to music and performance. Known as El Divo de Juárez, Gabriel embodied both vulnerability and extravagance, using his art to speak to themes of love, loss, and resilience that deeply resonated with millions. The circumstances of his death reflected broader challenges of his era. The relentless pace of global touring, the pressures placed on artists to sustain demanding schedules even in later life, and the expectation that performers continually give of themselves to their audiences. Gabriel was in the midst of a U.S. concert tour when he passed away, a stark reminder of how entertainers often sacrifice personal health in pursuit of artistic connection and cultural presence. The immediate consequences of his death were profound. Vigils erupted across Mexico and beyond, with thousands gathering in plazas to sing his songs in unison. The Mexican government honored him with ceremonies befitting a national hero, while his hometown of Ciudad Juárez declared days of mourning. For many, his passing was not only the loss of an artist, but also of a cultural voice that had provided comfort and identity to generations. His death amplified his legend, cementing him as more than a performer. He became a symbol of Mexican identity, queer visibility, and artistic devotion. In the years since, his legacy has continued to shape music and memory. Tributes in concerts, murals, and public commemorations ensure that his influence endures. Younger artists cite him as inspiration, while his recordings remain staples in households across Latin America. His legend grew larger after death, embodying how music can transcend mortality. Reflecting on his passing, Juan Gabriel's story highlights humanity's deep relationship with memory, art, and power. Death may silence a voice, but it cannot erase its echoes. Through song and performance, Gabriel achieved a form of immortality, showing how culture preserves figures who speak to the universal human condition. His life and death remind us that art is one of humanity's most enduring ways of confronting mortality, transforming loss into legacy and grief into collective remembrance. Anissa Jones, best remembered as Buffy on the 1960s sitcom Family Affair, died tragically on August 28, 1976, at the age of just 18. Her death was accidental, the result of a massive drug overdose during a party in California. Though ruled unintentional, the combination of barbiturates, cocaine, and PCP reflected the turbulent youth culture of the 1970s, when the pressures of fame, the lure of excess, and the lack of support for young performers often led to devastating outcomes. Her passing stood in stark contrast to the innocent, cheerful persona she had embodied on screen, revealing the often harsh realities faced by child actors once the spotlight faded. The circumstances of her death reflected broader societal challenges of the time. The 1970s were marked by both cultural liberation and a rising drug epidemic that claimed the lives of many young people. For Jones, who struggled with the weight of early fame and the abrupt end of her career after Family Affair ended in 1971, the era offered little in the way of resources for transitioning child stars into adulthood. Her situation mirrored that of other performers whose careers peaked early and left them vulnerable to exploitation, identity struggles, and substance abuse. The immediate consequences of her passing were both personal and symbolic. To fans of Family Affair, Jones's death was a heartbreaking reminder that the bright, idealized world of television bore little resemblance to the private struggles of its stars. Hollywood itself faced growing scrutiny over its treatment of child actors, with her case often cited in discussions about the dangers of fame without proper guidance or support. Her death also cast a lingering shadow over the otherwise wholesome legacy of the show, amplifying its bittersweet aura in syndication. Jones's passing amplified her legend in a tragic sense. Like many whose lives end too soon, she became frozen in time, a forever young star remembered not for her adulthood, but for the wide-eyed innocence she portrayed. Her story continues to resurface in retrospectives about child actors, serving as both cautionary tale and cultural touchstone. Reflecting on her death reveals humanity's complex relationship with mortality and memory. We are drawn to stories like Jones's because they highlight the fragile line between public image and private struggle, between innocence and harsh reality. Through television reruns, documentaries, and remembrance pieces, Anissa Jones remains immortalized, not only as Buffy, the charming child audiences adored, but also as a symbol of the need for compassion, support, and reform in how society treats its youngest talents. In this way, her brief life continues to echo far beyond her years. Miyoshi Umeki, the first Asian performer to win an Academy Award, passed away on August 28, 2007, at the age of 78 from cancer. Her death was natural, yet it carried a profound symbolic weight given her place in cultural history. Born in Japan and immigrating to the United States, Umeki carved out a career in a film industry that often relegated Asian actors to stereotypical roles. Her 1957 Oscar win for Sayonara marked both a personal triumph and a rare moment of recognition for Asian performers in mid-20th century Hollywood. The fact that she lived her later years quietly, largely out of the public eye, reflected the limited opportunities available to minority actors after brief moments of visibility. Her death highlighted the challenges of her era, particularly for actors of color navigating Hollywood in the 1950s and 1960s. While she broke barriers with roles in Flower Drum Song and The Courtship of Eddie's Father, the entertainment industry offered her few chances to expand beyond the expectations of exotic or supporting characters. In this way, her passing was a reminder of the struggles faced by many pioneering performers whose contributions were groundbreaking but not always sustained by systemic change. The immediate consequences of her passing were quieter than those of some stars, yet her death sparked renewed interest in her life and achievements. Film historians and cultural critics reflected on her Oscar win as a landmark moment, situating her legacy within the broader story of representation in Hollywood. For younger generations of Asian American performers, Umeki's life came to symbolize both the progress that had been made and the barriers that still existed. Her legend was amplified after her death because remembrance provided space for re-evaluation. In an era where diversity and inclusion have become central conversations in film and media, Umeki's career serves as a touchstone for understanding how far Hollywood has come and how much further it must go. Reflecting on her passing, we see humanity's persistent effort to reconcile mortality with memory. Figures like Umeki remind us that while individual lives are finite, their impact resonates across time through art and culture. She is immortalized not only in her Academy Award moment, but also in retrospectives, archives, and the continuing fight for representation. Her story demonstrates how we commemorate trailblazers, not merely for their roles, but for the doors they opened, even if only a crack for those who followed. In remembering Umeki, we acknowledge the enduring power of art to challenge boundaries and preserve legacy. Ruth Gordon, the Academy Award-winning actress, screenwriter, and playwright, passed away on August 28, 1985, at the age of 88. She died of natural causes at her home in Edgartown, Massachusetts, leaving behind a career that spanned over 6 decades. Her death, peaceful and expected due to her advanced age, reflected not only the natural course of life, but also the resilience of a woman who had carved her path in Hollywood during an era when opportunities for women were limited. Gordon's longevity in both life and career mirrored her determination to thrive in an industry often unkind to aging actresses. Her passing came at a time when Hollywood was beginning to celebrate strong, unconventional women on screen, roles she had helped pioneer. Gordon had famously won the Academy Award for Rosemary's Baby, where her portrayal of the unsettling Minnie Castevet introduced audiences to a new kind of character actress who embraced eccentricity over glamour. By the time of her death, she had also become beloved for her role in Harold and Maude, where her performance as the life-loving Maude offered a radical rethinking of aging, freedom, and love. That she passed away in her late 80s underscored how her real life mirrored the vitality and longevity celebrated in her most iconic roles. The immediate consequences of her passing were tributes from colleagues and admirers who recognized her as a trailblazer in both acting and writing. She had co-written screenplays such as Adam's Rib and Pat and Mike, which challenged gender stereotypes at a time when women's voices in Hollywood were frequently dismissed. Her death did not disrupt history in the dramatic way that violent or sudden losses do, but it solidified her legend as a figure who had helped shift perceptions of women in film. In memory, Gordon has been immortalized through the enduring popularity of her films and the characters she brought to life. Art, literature, and cinema continue to revisit her contributions as emblematic of wit, independence, and the refusal to conform to societal expectations. Her passing reminds us that mortality, while inevitable, does not silence influence. Humanity preserves such figures through storytelling, performance, and commemoration, ensuring their values and artistry endure beyond their lifetimes. Ruth Gordon's life and death affirm that power lies not only in defying mortality, but in shaping memory itself. Jan Clayton, remembered primarily for her role as Ellen Miller, the compassionate mother on the classic television series Lassie, died on August 28, 1983, at the age of 66. Her death was caused by cancer, a natural end that nonetheless stood in stark contrast to the wholesome and enduring image she had projected on screen. Clayton's passing reflected the personal and cultural struggles of mid-20th century America, particularly the tension between public persona and private challenges. Like many performers of her era, she embodied ideals of stability and family on television, while privately grappling with difficulties, including struggles with alcoholism in her later life. The immediate consequences of Clayton's death were most deeply felt in the realm of nostalgia. For audiences who had grown up with Lassie in the 1950s, she was a symbol of maternal warmth and reassurance during a post-war period marked by anxieties about domestic life and shifting gender roles. Her death prompted reflection on how television stars had shaped the cultural imagination in ways that extended beyond entertainment. Unlike sudden or violent deaths that shocked the public, Clayton's more gradual passing allowed for a quieter appreciation of her contributions, particularly her role in pioneering television's portrayal of American family life. Her legacy, however, was amplified by the cultural endurance of Lassie. The show itself became an American institution, representing values of loyalty, family, and perseverance. Clayton's association with those ideals ensured her place in collective memory, even as later generations discovered the series through reruns. Though her passing did not alter the course of history, it underscored the profound influence of television as a medium capable of shaping cultural values and identities. Clayton's death illustrates how mortality often reveals the duality of human experience, the public image that becomes immortalized, and the private struggles that remain part of the human condition. Humanity tends to remember such figures through the art they leave behind. In this case, her performances preserved on film and television. Commemoration through continued viewership, retrospectives, and the nostalgia-driven revival of classic shows ensures that Clayton's contributions endure. Ultimately, her passing highlights how memory, not mortality, defines the endurance of cultural icons. In preserving her image as a maternal figure, society demonstrates its desire to hold on to ideals of comfort, resilience, and love even as time moves forward. Emmett Till's death on August 28, 1955, was neither natural nor accidental. It was a brutal act of racial violence that shocked the conscience of the United States and became a pivotal turning point in American history. At only 14 years old, Till was lynched in Money, Mississippi, after being accused of whistling at a white woman. He was kidnapped, beaten, mutilated, and shot before his body was dumped in the Tallahatchie River. The sheer brutality of his murder reflected not only the entrenched racism of the Jim Crow South, but also the willingness of white supremacist systems to violently maintain social hierarchies in the mid-20th century. The immediate consequences of Till's death reverberated far beyond his family. His mother, Mamie Till Mobley, made the courageous decision to hold an open-casket funeral in Chicago, allowing the world to see her son's disfigured body. Photographs published in Jet magazine and other outlets forced Americans to confront the horrific realities of racial violence that many preferred to ignore. This act of radical transparency transformed Till's death into a catalyst for the civil rights movement. Just a few months later, Rosa Parks cited Till's murder as a source of inspiration for her refusal to give up her seat on a Montgomery bus, a decision that sparked the Montgomery bus boycott. While Till's life was tragically short, his death amplified his legacy in ways that transcended his years. He became a symbol of the fight against racial injustice, representing both the vulnerability of Black youth in America and the urgency of systemic change. The acquittal of his murderers, who later confessed to the crime in a paid magazine interview, further revealed the deep flaws of the justice system, galvanizing activists nationwide. The story of Emmett Till underscores humanity's complicated relationship with mortality, power, and memory. His death illustrates how violence can silence a life, yet also ignite movements that redefine history. We immortalize Till not through monuments alone, but through continual retellings in literature, art, film, and public commemoration. His name has become inseparable from the struggle for civil rights, a reminder of the costs of injustice and the enduring need for remembrance. In confronting his death, society both mourns the loss of innocence and draws strength from the demand for equality that his story continues to inspire.